What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Thoughts with Nick. It's been a bit rainy in my area recently, so I'm happy for the chance to sit outside tonight and record this and get a little break from the rain. Today's quote comes from Albert Einstein, and what he said was, "Everyone should be respected as an individual, but no one idolized." I think most of you guys probably have already heard of Albert Einstein, but if you're not familiar with him or his work, he was a very skilled physicist, and one of his greatest achievements or offerings, whatever you want to call it, was the theory of relativity. If you want to know more about that, I would recommend you look it up because there's plenty of sources online that are going to explain it much better than I could ever hope to with my rudimentary understanding. Einstein also provided a lot of social and political commentary, and this quote is an example of his social commentary. I agree with what he said wholeheartedly, and this is actually exactly what I want to talk about today, the issues that come with idolatry. To briefly define idolatry, or at least how I interpret it and how I'm going to be using it in this video, it's the practice of placing someone on a pedestal for whatever reason, pretty much elevating another individual to a higher status than you give yourself, and then worshiping that individual. I think this is pretty problematic for a variety of reasons for the people in both positions, the so-called idol and the idolizer. And I want to start today by detailing a few of the reasons why this is dangerous for the one in the idol position. When someone idolizes you and puts you on a pedestal, it can feel really awesome and empowering because someone's looking up to you, someone's admiring the person that you are. In reality, though, the idolizer is actually unintentionally, well, it could be intentionally, but I'm going to say unintentionally, inflating your ego and boosting your sense of entitlement. And when someone treats you this way, it's pretty likely that you're going to feel like you can do no wrong. It's okay to be loved and admired and appreciated and all the other things that go along with that. But when you start to be treated as more than another individual, just another person, it can start to get out of hand pretty quick. People treat your word as fact. They value your opinions and thoughts as higher than others, higher even than their own. So it'll be pretty easy to feel holier than thou because that's exactly how you're treated by others. That's how the world looks to you. In my opinion, though, there's two options here, one that's seldom chosen and one that's often embraced. The first choice, the road less traveled, if you will, is to humble yourself and denounce the praise and worship of your fellow humans. Realization and announcement of the fact that you're equal to them and not deserving of godlike treatment will really do a lot to humble you. And honestly, even though this isn't the intention, it's probably going to get you even more praise. Not a lot of people take this route, but I do feel like it leads to more genuine love and appreciation because people will always embrace one of their own because it's actually relatable rather than unattainable. An example that comes to mind right away here is Keanu Reeves, and whether you like his movies or whether you like him or not, he seems to continually emphasize the fact that despite his success, he's just a regular guy. He's super down to earth. All the videos and stuff you see of him, he's just a really humble and, like I said, down to earth kind of guy, and I think that's really admirable and impressive for someone of his status. And most of the time, he kind of gets his point across through actions, and as we know, actions speak louder than words. And there's plenty of other examples of people like this out there from all walks of life, but I think Keanu is one that most people are probably aware of. You're probably familiar with how he gives back and how he acts in public compared to lots of other celebrities. But back to the point, since I've never been in that position, I really can't even begin to imagine how difficult it is to renounce that level of adoration from the public, especially if you really worked and struggled in the dark to reach the level that you're at. It'll probably feel like justification for all your hard work, if you will, like everything's finally paid off, everybody loves you. And I think that's why a lot of people don't take the humble route. They take the latter route that I mentioned, which is embracing the delusion, because it is a delusion that they're somehow better or more worthy than other people. I think it's an outright trap, quite frankly, and it really doesn't lead to any good outcomes. I actually think it invites a profound downfall later on. What good could possibly come from being treated as above your peers? I think being treated that way long term leads to acute entitlement and high horse syndrome. What I mean by that is that the idol gets used to their idol status and begins to preach from on high to their loyal subjects. This could be about anything: how to act, what to like, what values to honor. They begin to expound their lifestyle and ethics and morals onto their followers. And I want to be clear here. I don't think that this is necessarily a conscious and intentional action. I think it's something that just kind of comes with the status. When you have influence, you want to exert that influence. It's easy to unknowingly and unintentionally exert it. I think it's kind of just human nature, but that's just my own opinion. I'm sure there's plenty of people who do take advantage and use their influence maliciously, but I genuinely think a lot of the times people in the idol position, they share their opinions or thoughts, and that's just normal. Everyone does that. They just have a large audience, and as a result, the things that they say and the ideals that they share end up taking root as basically a law within their respective fan base. And having your word treated as law, I think it only does more to inflate the ego, because like I mentioned, it gives you that sense that you can do no wrong when everyone's hanging on your every word. As a result, I think it's probable that the idolized group, they'll begin to look down on regular people, and think of regular things as beneath them, and that they're entitled to the best possible treatment and the best possible outcomes no matter what the situation is, because they're above the norm. And after a certain point, I think it's, like I said, I think it's just human nature to accept this level of treatment you receive as what you deserve, because once it's been 5 years, 10 years of everyone pretty much worshiping you, that starts to become all you know, all you remember. And it's, as a final point on that topic, it's a lot harder and much less intuitive to force some actual self-reflection and humble yourself. It's so much easier to just embrace the love, and whether or not it's founded or unfounded, to just accept the heaps of praise that are thrown upon you. But once you reach that point, I think it can be especially tumultuous, and this is where things can start to flip and go downhill, like I mentioned. When the idol gets caught in the trap of entitlement and ego inflation, their actions start to become really disgusting to everyone except themselves. And I don't really want to get into examples, but I'm sure that everyone listening can easily think of an example of a celebrity being a total ass, or treating staff at an establishment horribly, and just displaying profound entitlement simply because of their self-perceived status. And this kind of action is exactly what defines the trap that I mentioned before. The idolizers boosted the idol's ego to unimaginable proportions, leading to abhorrible behavior, which, when exposed, causes the idolizers to cast down their idol. And just like that, the ivory tower begins to crumble, and the idolizers finally realize that the idol is no better than them or anybody else. This is where we can start to get into so-called cancel culture. I mean, that's cancel culture is a little deeper than that, but you get where I'm going with that, where someone who was once an idol now becomes an outcast. And a lot of times those people who end up in that position, they really have a hard time rebounding or rebranding or just bouncing back, because their identity was so closely tied to their perceived status. But just like that, the life they know as someone who was at the pinnacle of society has flipped upside down and totally changed. I would have to imagine, like I said, because I've never been in this position, I would have to imagine that it's really difficult mentally. And that brings me to another point that I want to hit on, which is the potential mental strain of idols. The mental strain of being idolized is something that I think's been gaining attention and coverage in recent years, but I don't know that I've heard anyone really connect the dots, so to speak, to idolatry being the root of this issue. When someone reaches that idol status where they've amassed a large following and they have influence and sway over others, their mistakes and missteps can become huge stories, and the pressure of trying to live up to a standard of perfection is insurmountable. Think about trying to enjoy yourself and live well, while also knowing that every choice you make is going to be psychoanalyzed by fans and just by the media in general. A great example that I think of just off the top here is Justin Bieber. He was a mega star from a young age, basically a cult-like following. And as he got older, there's a bunch of stories circulating still to this day through the media about different stuff that he does and his behavior, and he's not acting right and all this and that. But when I look objectively, I don't think he's done anything that was too crazy or like that drastic. And I think it's easily just an over amplification of his actions that led to a so-called fall from grace, because he was observed mostly by paparazzi and people recording him, which is a whole other conversation, but I think it's kind of messed up. But anyway, taking pictures and videos of him doing things that might not have matched his previous persona, and it's just weird to me, because he was like a kid star and now he's growing up and doing his own thing and living life, and he just gets all this hate and gets shit on. And it's like, dude, he was rich from a young age. Like he never had a chance really to engage and indulge with the money. And I'm not saying it's right to do that, but you got to give people a little bit of grace and think about what you would do in their position. And I don't know. I don't think people tend to do that with their idols. And like I said, quite frankly, a lot of the stuff that I saw from Justin Bieber was really not that alarming or that crazy. It was just totally blown out of proportion. Going along with that, I mean, that topic just also makes me think of Michael Jackson and just the unfathomable amount of paparazzi and fan attention that he received everywhere that he went. I saw Magic Johnson talking about Michael Jackson coming to see a Lakers game once, and he actually had to leave because of all the attention that he got. And this is from fans who came to see a basketball game. He was just another fan, and he got so much attention that he actually had to leave. He couldn't even enjoy the game. What kind of life is that? Serious, actually think about that. What kind of life is that? It's people only want to think about the good, but that ain't good. When it comes to the idols, though, I really think we tend to ignore some of the challenges that come with that position just because the benefits seem so desirable. Like I was just mentioning right there, the trade-off between the mass amounts of money and the unwanted attention at times, it seems like a pretty beneficial, positive trade-off to us on the outside. And while it's true that the idolizers make a lot of their wealth off of, rather, the idols make a lot of their wealth off the idolizers, I think those idolizers are largely responsible for the mental strain that comes with it. The idolizers tend to impose a lofty and idealized standard on the idol, which then becomes the expectation for how they live their life forever, regardless of how old they got famous, how old they were when they got famous, regardless of their future intentions. They get some kind of ideals imposed on them, and that's what they're expected to stick to forever. A group of fans and supporters creates what I'm going to call a prison of expectation for their idol. And at the end of the day, the one in the idol position really is just another human being. So they're liable to make mistakes, and they feel things just the same as you and me. And going back to what I mentioned before, this is where it's crucial to connect those dots. The idolizers being unsatisfied with anything less than the perfect version of their idol creates that very mental strain that plagues those being idolized, which then can cause a variety of bad outcomes, which we've all heard of: celebrity suicides, overdose, and whatever, just antics that are caused by that mental strain. But anyway, shifting the focus over to the idolizers, while it seems innocent enough to be a fan of somebody or something, idolization is actually pretty unhealthy. I think it's quite problematic because it totally distorts your reality, in my opinion. When you idolize someone right away, right off the bat, you're inherently placing them higher than yourself. You're putting them on a pedestal, which by default makes you subservient. You decided for one reason or another that there's something so special, so unique, so impressive, whatever the case may be, about that idol, that they really are above you and you beneath them. Right away, I'm sure you can see how troublesome this is. Right away. Idolizing someone deprives you of your status as their equal, as a fellow human being. Building on that, because of the status you bestowed upon them, you think they're deserving of better treatment and better outcomes than others, when in reality they're no more deserving than you or I. And this goes back to that entitlement I was talking about a few minutes ago. It starts to become more of a qualification or justification of the entitlement from the idolizers. They treat it as warranted, like, oh, they have this status, so they deserve to be treated that way. No, No, they don't. Nobody deserves to be treated any better or any worse than anybody else for any reason. And like I said, this qualification, this justification is exactly what leads to the inflated egos of the idols. And I get it. I get that that's not your goal or intent as the idolizer. You just want to be a fan. You want to support somebody that's doing their thing, and you're rocking with them, for a lack of better terms. But when you elevate someone to that idol status, you're inherently degrading yourself, making the idol more than your peer. Another problem with depriving your own status is that it makes the idol seem unattainable. When you're no longer their equal, it's going to feel impossible for you to reach their heights because you've placed yourself beneath them. You've put them out of reach, out of sight, and, well, not out of sight, out of mind, but let me just go back to out of reach. I see that really potentially affecting the idolizer's mental state because they begin to feel less than and unworthy, which could start to make life feel dull and less pleasant. Putting someone on a pedestal and raising them to a tier above the rest naturally makes them seem infallible. What I mean by this is that you can't imagine them failing or making mistakes or just doing wrong in general. And I think that's just another reason why people will qualify or justify the entitled actions of their idols, because they actually don't think that they're capable of being wrong or rude or out of line. The more problematic part here, at least to me, is what happens when you take this idea to its logical conclusion. To me, the logical conclusion, the natural extension of this idea is the copying or adoption of ideas and ideals, pretty much attempting to replicate everything about your idol and emulate them in your own life. I think this starts to get really, really dangerous because at that point, you're not even your own individual anymore. You're trying to be a clone of somebody else. You're living based on ideas and ideals that don't belong to you. They're not your own. They're not inspired by you. They're just things that you picked up from somebody that you're a fan of. And taking this one step further, I think idols often take advantage, well, maybe not often, but definitely from time to time, take advantage of the position that they're in and use it to push a product that is either theirs or something that they're getting paid to promote. Their loyal subjects then follow the leader and buy up whatever it is that idol is pushing. In a lot of instances, this is pretty much just a cash grab, and we can see that accentuated today in the age of cryptocurrency, where these people will do rug pull scams. They get the people to buy in, and then next thing you know, where'd all the money go? It's just a modern day example. The idol just blatantly takes advantage of their position and uses it to make abject profit at the expense of their supporters. On its face, straight up on its face, that is disgusting. But it's unfortunately somewhat common. On the flip side of that, this infallibility that I mentioned, it also sets up the idolizer for disappointment in the event that the idol does have a genuine fall from grace. Losing that illusion of infallibility, especially for somebody that you idolize, could be pretty crushing for the idol. And I do think this probably isn't quite as relevant for adults because you're not quite as naive, and you're going to be aware that people slip up, and you're going to have heard of other celebrities that were at the top and they fell all the way to the bottom, the lowest of lows from the highest of highs. But I do think that kids are pretty susceptible to that and can really crush them and let them down big time when somebody that they idolize falls from grace like that. And I think that could take a toll, like I said, especially more so on kids than adults. But I don't know. I think that was worth mentioning. Idolizing someone creates a bad relationship that's harmful and dangerous to both the idol and the idolizer. Being idolized can lead to a whole host of problems, mainly having to do with entitlement and privilege, but also including serious mental strain and the major burden of public expectations. Being an idolizer can also create a reduction in self-image and self-esteem, and it sets the idolizer up for disappointment when they're faced with the eventual realization that their idol is another imperfect human just like themselves. Final point I want to mention today is self-idolatry. What I mean here is, rather than placing somebody else on a pedestal, you place yourself there and worship yourself to a certain degree. I've heard of this idea or practice gaining traction or just being talked about more in recent years, and I think that it's not really as beneficial as people make it out to be. It's not really that great of a thing. And certainly there's good aspects that come with putting yourself first, and I do think that until you have kids, it's important to put yourself first and make sure to focus on your life and your goals. But self-idolization is so much more than that, in my opinion. When you idolize yourself, I think it becomes easy to absolve yourself of all wrongdoing, because as an idol, you're on the pedestal and everyone else is beneath you. So you're automatically justified in your actions. I also think as an idol, you never make mistakes anymore because idols don't mess up. Their choices are perfection. Obviously, you can see that I'm being sarcastic and you see where I'm going with that. It's just, you can continue on and take that further. But anyway, I also think that self-idolatry is connected or maybe even caused by some deep-seated insecurities. And just think about it. Think about it. Why would you put others beneath you if you're really comfortable in your own skin? Those ideas do not go together. If you're really comfortable, there's no need to put other people down. You would feel perfectly fine just as you are. You'd feel perfectly comfortable with other people. You wouldn't even need to ascribe either one of you status, you on the pedestal and them beneath it. That would never be necessary. I think when you idolize yourself and look down on others, it's very likely that that's a projection. And if you want to hear more about projection and judgment, you should definitely check out Judgment is a Mirror, another video of mine where I explore a similar theme, not really connected to idolatry, but similar to what I was just getting into there about projection and judgment. But anyway, when you think that way and self-idolize, you remove a great level of responsibility from your life. Responsibility for your actions, responsibility to be a good person, responsibility to learn from your mistakes. I think you can probably continue to extrapolate that idea further without me just continuing to expand on the problem there. Just like the celebrities that people idolize, if you idolize yourself, your ego is going to grow and grow and grow, and before you know it, you're going to be stuck up and entitled. There's nothing wrong with putting yourself first and staying committed to your goals and your path, but I think that's very different from self-idolization. That being said, I do think it's an easy trap laid by the ego. When you're staying committed to your goals and you're seeing progress and you're getting after it every day and you're seeing results, it's going to be, it's not going to be, but it could be easy to allow that thought to take root in your mental garden. That thought that you're the greatest, that thought that everyone else is undeserving because you have some special thing that just makes you better, it makes you more worthy. Basically, you can easily just start thinking that you're above others and others are beneath you. But be honest with yourself. You know this. People don't want to hang out with someone who acts like that. People don't want to be around someone who thinks like that. And trust me, if you think that way, even if you don't think that your actions are showing it, if you think that way, if you think that you're the number one, you're the best ever, you're this, you're that, it's going to show. It's going to show in your actions. It's going to show in how you treat others. It's going to show in how you treat your friends. It's going to show. You might not think it, but guess what? That's just you absolving yourself of another mistake. I want to be explicitly clear here. Self-idolatry is a trap set by the ego that will undermine your progress and cripple your personal relationships. Just like the negative thoughts that we tear out by the roots, even though this one seems like a positive thought, you got to think of it like a wolf in sheep's clothing. It wants to sneak into your garden, sneak into that mental garden masquerading as a positive thought, when in reality, it's just disguised negativity. But instead of directed towards yourself, instead of some self-hate, it's going outward toward others because you're putting them down when you're putting yourself up. You don't need to put others down to put yourself up if you really feel confident and really feel good about yourself. Like I said, those do not go together. I don't have a perfect conclusion to wrap this up. I think it's important to be proud of yourself and be proud of your accomplishments, but you can't let it turn into self-worship. It's a fine line. I don't necessarily know how to tell you to walk that line, but it's crucial to know and be aware of the tipping point, because that's when it can get dark. It can get bad. But you won't know, though. You'll think everything's good because you're in love with yourself. Anyway, my best advice here is pretty similar to what I always say and how I wrap up most videos. Know yourself. Really try and actually get to know yourself. really reflect on yourself, do self-work, understand your actions, where they're coming from. And I think this is probably going to help you to avoid an overinflated ego while also being proud of yourself, being confident, but not taking it too far to where you're shitting on others and your pride is overwhelming and downright egotistical, egomaniac-esque. Anyway, as usual, it's easier said than done, but I think if you stay diligent and really pay attention to your attitudes towards yourself and others, you'll be able to catch yourself, and you'll be able to know when you're taking that ego too far and leaning into it too much, that it's getting problematic. You should never be thinking about how much better you are than other people. And if you find yourself there, you need to do some reflection immediately and think about what got you there. Why did you start thinking it was okay to think that you're better than others? What's the root of that insecurity that led you there? How did you get there? What made you think that other people are beneath you? Because that is not right. I know it's hard. It's hard to be real with yourself, and it's hard to cast down your idols, especially if one of your idols is yourself. It's going to be hard to take yourself off that pedestal, man, but you got to do it. Once you realize and accept that status, that idol status, is a social construct, that it's pretty much entirely fictitious, it's going to be pretty easy to break that pedestal and accept your fellow humans as what they are, which is your equal. That's all I got for today, guys. If you can, take some time and just try and think about what I said. I know I'm going to. And if you made it to the end of the video, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.